the best guidance that we get is actually empowering us to make our own decisions. It's not
Mhm.
telling us this is what you should do. And that's, I think, one of the misunderstandings about channeling most of the time. Bad channeling tells you what to do, how to do it, why you like what negative consequences will happen if you don't, to kind of scare you into
Mhm.
doing it. It
Mhm.
uses a lot of shoulds, a lot of force, and says, I'm the only one that has these answers. You have to come
Mhm.
to me. It's just replicating what we know as cults, right? In the non physical.
Mhm.
That's not a good source
Mhm.
of guidance.
Welcome to Big Crystal Energy, Season 3, the Veil Season. I'm Ashleigh, and I live at the threshold between medicine and magic, between the visible world and what waits just beyond it, between the person I present and the witch I am. I've learned something. The in between isn't a problem to solve, it's a place of power. This season, we're exploring the veil, where Victorian women spoke for the dead, where fairies guard the crossroads, where glamour becomes armor, where you stop apologizing for being both things at once. The crystals have always known the way through. Let me show you. Welcome back to Big Crystal Energy. I am Ashleigh, and today's episode is a really special one. I am sitting down with Kim Charlson, the host of the podcast Vessels and Voices, and a trance channel who works with her guide, Monty. I first found Kim through the podcast Opening the Door with Haley B, and immediately felt that quiet but powerful pull, the kind where you know someone is speaking from a deeply embodied place. Her work felt thoughtful, grounded, and expansive all at once. And what I love most about her story is how human it is. So today's conversation is kind of intentionally loose and intuitive. And we talk about Kim's life a little bit before channeling and how she came into this work, what it looks like now, her relationship with Monty, the crystals she works with during sessions, and the wisdom that continues to come through her podcast. And this is one of those conversations you don't rush. So wherever you are, take a breath, settle in, and let this one meet you where you are. Welcome to the podcast, Kim.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And what a beautiful intro. I'm so honored to
Oh,
be here and all the wonderful things
yes.
that you said about my work. It's a wonderful way to start a podcast off.
Yes. And Kim and I have been going back and forth for a while trying to get this scheduled. My schedule is awful with work and everything. So I'm so glad we finally found the time to make it happen. So yeah, originally there's a podcast that I love and I've mentioned it many times in the past, Opening the Door. I heard Kim on there and I was like, wow, this is so interesting. And honestly, I didn't know much about this kind of work until probably the past year or so. And I was just absolutely fascinated by everything that she shared. So I would love for you to just, introduce yourself a little bit and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I am a voice channeler, which means that I allow a source of guidance. And the one that I work with the most closely, their name is Monty. And I allow them to come into my body and my consciousness leaves. So my consciousness really sits back behind me in space and I make room for Monty to come in and then they deliver and channel through me. But the act of channeling itself has a very broad definition. So I always like to specify that I'm a voice channeler because channeling is anytime that we take anything from the non physical and we bring it into the physical. And that broad definition makes it sometimes a little hard to figure out, am I channeling? Am I not channeling? Because most people are actually channeling all the time and they don't realize it. Of that, when we are tuning in with our psychic senses and we're sensing something that is in the non physical, whether that's like a quality of a crystal that we're getting an energetic read off of it or we're feeling into our energy, all of that is also the act of channeling. So it's much broader than a lot of people really allow themselves to understand of you're probably channeling right now. And especially if you're tuned into your psychic skills, you're channeling probably all the time without even realizing it. And for me, I didn't really know that I was channeling when I started. And it wasn't until I spontaneously voice channeled the first time that I really started to explore what channeling was. That I had been learning how to tune into energy, that I did really extensive energy healing with a close friend of mine who became an energy healer. And we did super extensive sessions. And in part of that process, started to really be able to tune into the non physical energies, understand them, starting to get to know them, and then decided to start doing energy healing myself and did it and ended up spontaneously voice channeling for the first time.
That okay, so when that happened, what did that feel like for you?
So the first time that I spontaneously channeled, I was trying to do an energy healing on my husband at the time. And he had this energy that was, I could feel it inside and sense it. Cause my psychic senses mostly are clairsentience, clairvoyance, and claircognizance. Claircognizance is the one that's the hardest to explain because you just have this knowing and you don't know why.
Mhm.
And so that's why we very
Mhm.
often will question that one. So I had this sense of that he had this block in his energy that needed to be moved, and I didn't know what to do. It wasn't budging, it wasn't really moving at all. So I asked for help and thought to myself, "Huh, I really wish there was someone here to guide me during this." I had been on the search for a mentor for quite a while. And I felt this energy kind of come in from the right side that was this warm, loving energy. And I thought, oh, this must be the energy that he needs. I'm going to bring this energy into my body and then transmit it to him to clear this block out. And then at that point, I started to feel the energy in my throat and decided, this energy wants to just bubble up in some way. And next thing I knew, I was speaking. My consciousness was still fully inside of my body when I spontaneously channeled for the first time. It wasn't like I had done some astral projection, it wasn't there. I was just in a very expanded state. And then it really surrendered and allowed this voice to come through. And in the moment when it happened, like caught myself thinking like, oh, this is really weird. Like that doesn't feel like me who's articulating this. And
Mhm.
after we were done, and like during the message bit where the message was coming through me, my husband was responding to it and asking questions, and then it was responding back. And then when we were done afterwards, he is really in tune with his spirit team and talks to them every morning when he wakes up first thing in the day. And he was like, "This is a conversation I was having with them this morning. That's my spirit guides that I was talking to. I think you voice channeled." And at that
Wow.
point, I didn't even know what voice channeling was. So I was like,
Oh, okay.
okay,
That was gonna be my
is
question.
this is this in my mind? Did I make this up? But I didn't know anything about his conversation that he'd had with his spirit guides earlier that morning and could see that it was a continuation because he takes notes on it on his phone every morning. He showed me the notes and he was like, "This is what we talked about." And it was exactly the same things that they had continued talking about. So that verification, if I hadn't had that, I probably wouldn't have said, "Oh, this is voice channeling. This is coming from something other than me." I would have thought it was just me reading the energy really well or something like that. And then kind of went down the rabbit hole of learning more about voice channeling and realized, yeah, that's actually what happened.
'Cause I'm just putting myself in that position. I think that if I was working with my husband, he would have probably been like, "What is happening here?" Because he doesn't know any of these kinds of things. So it's interesting that your husband is aware, and I'm sure that
Mhm.
helped because
It
mine
did
would
a
have been
lot.
like probably been like, "Ashley, you're just making this up." So how did you was it like, did you physically feel a change? You felt the change in your voice? Did you like when you come out of that do you remember what you said?
I did in the moment at the time because my consciousness wasn't removed from my body, and it really could feel like this warm feeling in my throat and that energy really wanted to come out of that space. I thought it just wanted to be kind of transmitted from energy to pure energy, not really in the way of being spoken out loud. And if I did not have this relationship with my husband and had been with someone that I didn't know very intimately and know kind of their practices and what they were doing, I think I would have probably just brushed it off. And the reason why my husband got really into it was because he saw how much doing energy healing had really changed me and had had a positive impact on me because he was definitely in the same camp as your husband of like, haha, you're just making this stuff up, sweetie. Like, I love you so
Mhm.
much, but if this helps you, sure, but it's just spicy psychology. And that's how he
Mhm.
started in that. And we can usually see that in our families of the more that we really show what we're experiencing and provide more irrefutable proof as much as we can, it makes our family members and our friends kind of go, huh, okay, maybe there is something to this. And he started to see that and then started believing into it and started doing energy healing with my friend as well. And it really became this process that the two of us went through, and now is a really big part of our lives.
Yeah, because I mean, I think about even in my own situation, just the things that I talk about and the things that I share in my own life, which is different than this, but I think a lot of people still just don't really understand, but then they can see the changes in me. So then I think they realize, well, there must be something to this kind of work that she's doing because I mean, my evolution in a very small period of time has been vast. So then what happened from there? So you had that first experience, and then did you think like, well, this is something I want to tap into more often, or did you even know how to make that happen?
I didn't know how to make it happen, but I knew I really wanted to pursue it because at that point in time, I was trying to reorient my career and figure out what direction I wanted to go in. And I was practicing energy healing on my husband because I was trying to give away free energy healing sessions to friends and no one wanted any.
Mhm.
So at that point, I
Yes.
was like, hey, maybe this is the thing to try and see. So I started buying up books about channeling. I started looking for classes. I started looking for a mentor. And I found some formal classes that I went through. But the more that I kind of went down that path of learning the formal active training, which I now teach myself as a channeling teacher, I also started to tune into the being named Monty that I coordinate and collaborate with now. And they really started to mentor me in the non physical way of tuning into that. And one of the things that they really advised me to do was to start working with crystals. Crystals are stable energy. It doesn't really change in the same way as an energetic being does. That their energy can change really rapidly if they want it to, and it can be difficult for us to tune in, especially if we're newer to tuning into non-physical energies in that way of like we're not really sure of its form, we can't really figure it out. Crystals have a very specific stable energy. They can have their own personalities, certainly, like each rock can be
Sure.
different from a different one, but they have certain qualities to it. So, one of the exercises that I use that I now teach as well is to use crystals to open up your ability for discernment, because that's the key with channeling. You have to know what you're tuning into and if it's safe for you to do so, if it's going to be beneficial. So, what we do is we take different crystals and we meditate with them and tune into their energies. So, right now in my hands, I've got some citrine, and this is one of
Mhm.
my crystals that I used when I started off with to tune into because I'm very drawn to it. And then Ishua, which is a harder to find crystal, but for whatever reason, I was really drawn to it. And it's spelled Isua. So citrine is really common. You can find this pretty
Yes.
easily different places. But Ishua, for whatever reason, I found a seller, decided to buy it. It's really heavy because it's a very old crystal. It's from, I believe, Greenland, and it is made out of some of the earliest life forms on Earth that got compressed, and it's extremely heavy for that reason. It's a very, very old crystal that's because of global warming, it has become more accessible because as
Mm.
the glaciers have receded, it's become exposed. So now that I know more about sustainability, it's not a crystal I would recommend for people to source because it
Mhm.
does negatively impact the environment where it came from. I got it used from somebody else. So, but when I worked with Ashua, for example, it took me on a journey through meditation and really explained what its energy was. And it allowed me to tune into it. So I tuned into it and got a different understanding of time to a very beginning organism in the earth. All they could tell was the difference between night and day, when the water would come in, when the water would recede in terms of the tides and the sun. That was time, but it had no real big form to it. There was not in the same way of like we measure time as humans now. And it has this very eternal quality to it. When we stop caring about the minute details, it kind of all just starts blending together. So these are the
Mhm.
kind of lessons that you begin to tune into these different crystals and understand their energy. And that gives you a like a vocabulary to begin to discern different beings. So for me now, when I have this like eternal quality aspect of time that I can sense, I feel that in beings who are much older, who have held the same form for an extended period of time. So, beings that are older than, say, ascended masters, they have that quality to them that I now understand and can tune into and say, oh, this is an energy who really doesn't understand time in the same way that we do. And so then we have to ask this different questions. That's not a being that you ask, okay, 3 months from now, should I still be working at this particular job or not? They're going to have no idea. They can't tune into that because they don't understand time.
Mhm.
So that's why training with crystals can help you develop that discernment. And then you can map those traits and qualities onto beings that you interact with to then be able to understand it a little better. But because crystals are really solid in their energy, it's easier for beginners to open up to and tune into, especially since it's physical. So we can have kind of an entryway into that non physical energy versus just, okay, meditate and see if your spirit guides show up. It's really hard for most people to be able to do that, even if they do have a solid foundation of psychic skills. It can be very difficult to open that up in the beginning.
When you work with clients and their in crystals, do you have recommendations as to ones that they start with, or do you let them kind of pick what they feel drawn to?
Honestly, it's whatever you feel drawn to because when you're channeling, your energy has to be compatible with what it is of the being that you're channeling. If it's not,
Mhm.
you're going to really struggle to get their energy compatible with yours. And there's different types of channeling when it comes to we're working with a being. And there's external channeling where they're outside of us. And then there's internal channeling where it's more mixed in together. And then there's different states of how mixed you are. Of when I first started channeling, my consciousness was in my body. I was kind of there monitoring. I was not really out of the way. The guidance wasn't always accurate as a result. Versus now, my consciousness is really removed from my body. And I don't always remember what I channel. I'll remember it for a little while, but then like a week or two later, I get the general gist, but I don't know the specifics of I will have,
Mhm.
like, say, a client come back after a few months from a channeling session. I won't really remember it, and then I'll kinda have these little nudges of, "Oh, this is what we talked about. This is what was in the channeling session. This was what was important about this client." And it's usually comes back during the act of channeling is when I start to have that realization come back in again. But it's really of your energy has to be compatible with what it is that you're channeling so that way it can reside within your body or that you can receive the messages that they're sending because it comes purely in energy. So, for example, if you're someone who's really drawn to one particular type of energy in a crystal, of, say, for example, you really like citrine, like I do, then it's going to be really easy for you to work with energies that have that very bright sense, that vibrancy to them that citrine has. Versus, I have a much harder time working with guides or energetic beings that have a much darker energy, not necessarily in like a negative sense, but in like a more they have less of that like really shiny light filled. Most of the crystals that I have a tendency to like are mostly clear with very little color to them. And that's the beings that I tend to enjoy working with. They're extremely optimistic, positively light-filled beings. Not all beings are like that. There's one that I do work with that I struggle with sometimes that she has more of dragon-like qualities to her. And I would say that numbite is a crystal that
Oh,
she's
yes.
more like. I have a hard
Mhm.
time working with numbite. That's a difficult crystal for me. So I have a hard time working with her. And so we're acclimating my energy over time of I can get used to working with her, but it's not something that comes easily to me.
'Cause, I mean, I think about stones that I'm very drawn to, and they're probably, like, quite different than you. Because I just feel
For
like
sure.
I love a labradorite. I love kind of that dark, like a dark smoky quartz, like a really dark stone. I do like citrine, I do like clear quartz, I do love the bright, shiny stones, but they're not my go-tos. And
Right.
and that's just my energy, but I'm not a necessarily I don't think of myself as what you said, like, bad or, like, dark in the sense
No,
of it's
yeah.
negative, it's just that's, like, what I feel, and it's hard sometimes to put it in it's very, very difficult for me to put it into words.
And that makes sense because a lot of times we have this human idea of morality that does not apply to the energetic world in the same
Mhm.
way. And things like the historical organized religion, purity culture very often come into our interpretation of energies. When we're channeling, we have to really understand that what we know nothing. We don't know anything. And we have to accept that we're in an experience of accepting new experiences, new realities, new ways of being as part of channeling. We have to let that take a step back. So it's not that we don't make sure that we're safe and that it's compatible and it's something that we want to work with. But even when I work with Monty, who I have a very deep relationship with, they know things that I could never understand as a
Mhm.
human being. And one of the things that they very often explain is that it's really, we have energetic preferences as humans that have been instilled in us through generations. Some of those are darker energies, bad. Darker energies, avoid. Darker energies, we don't want to be part of. And so for people that are actually then drawn to those, can come with a lot of moralistic aspects of it, of you're bad because you like these things. And it's not really viewed that way in the non-physical realm. They're
Mhm.
just like, that's not your preference. You don't like it that way. That's okay. You just have a different space. And it doesn't mean that you can't work with those things. My best friend is obsessed with Labradorite. It's her favorite. And
Mhm.
she has definitely like a deeper, darker energy, very wonderful person. I love her so much. But we have completely opposite aesthetics in terms of what kind of crystals we like to work with
Mhm.
and how we view the world. And that's, makes our lives so much richer when we open up to that, both in who we're friends with and who we associate with, but also in our experience of the non-physical as well, too.
I completely agree. I One of my best friends is very much she's probably much more like you. I mean, but it's like we have this beautiful complement. She's the light to my dark, but we're both,
Hmm.
but we both have silly energy too. It doesn't mean that you have to just be one particular way. Now, my question for you is for people that are new to even hearing about channeling, understanding it, what would be a situation in which you would want to work with someone that does channeling?
It's really that you're curious and you want to learn how to do it to get guidance from non-human sources. Humans have a pretty limited perspective. We have very, very short lives compared to non-physical beings have, I want to say like they have a life because it doesn't really function the same way, but they have a continued existence and a continued consciousness for a much, much longer period of time. Monty has been around in his current form, in their current form, for a very long time, multiple, multiple generations of humans over thousands of years. That lends itself to a very different perspective of when time changes, perspective changes of the space time relationship of how we treat space and time as humans are very linked. They become less linked the longer that you survive, the longer that you maintain your consciousness the same for a long period of time. Because we can think about our view versus an ant, very, very different.
Yes.
Not necessarily that we're wiser than ants. They have their own wisdom, they have their own way of viewing the world, but it
Mhm.
allows us to access something different. And very often, they can see and understand and interpret energy in a much higher capacity than what we can. So it's
Mhm.
like as if you were often speaking with someone who has eons of experience with certain things. And it may be that certain beings are experts in certain things, and you have a group of spirit guides. There's usually a couple hundred. You may only know a very small handful of them. Channeling is a skill for them just as much for us. The reason why you want to access that sort of wisdom is often because you want a new perspective. You want to learn more. You want to experience more. Spirit guides are the easiest thing to begin working with because their energy is very close to ours all the time. It's not really a hierarchy of like a lot of people talk about like you're low vibrational or you're high vibrational, and we assign value to that. But the earth has a very low vibrational energy. Her energy is very slow moving, but we wouldn't say that she's a negative thing. She is the mother. She provides
Mhm.
for us. Everything that we experience in physical reality is a product of her. But we have a tendency as humans to say low vibrational equals bad. That's not necessarily the case. So it's more of that where we are vibrating at a consistent basis, our spirit guides are just barely above that. They're non-physical, but they're very attuned to us because they're with us all the time. So they're the group that we can access most easily. Some people, though, they have a really easy time really going up, extending their energy to a very expanded state. And they may find that they have an easier time communicating with other beings like ascended masters, extraterrestrials, those sorts of beings. It's really, depends on the person. But if you're at the very beginning of starting, what I always advise is learning the essential what I always advise is learning the essential skills of channeling first, which is grounding, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Grounding is actually really, really important in channeling because we are bringing through things from the non-physical to the physical. So we have to be tethered to the physical to be able to do that. Our nervous system has to feel safe to be able to channel as well, because the more that we extend our consciousness, the more that our body is responsible for the here. We have to be able to return to it. Then you have to be able to open up your energetic centers to receive. So if you're someone who is going through a lot of energy healing, you have a lot of blocks, you need to clear those out to be able to connect. So I know for me, part of my process was all of the energy healing that I had done before of clearing away a lot of those blocks made a huge difference. It's not that you have to be in a perfect state, but if you have a lot of blocks that are preventing you from allowing yourself to tune in, that can be a holdback of why it's not working for you. Then you have to be able to extend and expand your energy out. So we're grounded, so that way we feel safe. We have a base to reside back into. We have opened up our energy centers to receive because that's where the non physical energy comes into. And then we expand out so that way we can get to the vibrational level where they're at. And then at that point, it's asking your spirit guide, one in particular, to come and make themselves present with you and to be able to then meet them, understand their presence. And for most people, it's very, very vague in the beginning. It may just be like, oh, I have a sense of calm or ease or relaxation. Or I feel a tiny little sense of something there. It's something vague, like I kind of can feel something. You have to lean into that sensation of whatever it is that you're getting, whether it's a sensation or a knowing or a feeling or a nudge, whatever that tiny little thing is, to lean into that. And then that's how you begin to develop that relationship of, okay, I recognize there is actually something there. And I have a free meditation if you want to get started for all of our listeners to try it out that guides through the basic steps. But it's really understanding that sometimes we have to just trust what we're feeling in our bodies and our senses, and that's enough, even if our logical mind is saying, there's nothing there. You're making that up. That's completely you, because it's usually not. And somebody else may be able to verify it for you. Of working in a group sometimes is a really good place to begin if you're someone that has a lot of that thinking mind energy that's interfering.
Yeah, because I think that's where it gets really difficult. I mean, number one, for a lot of people, it's hard to just even start. The grounding process is so hard sometimes to just
Yes.
be still, just be still, and then allow these things to come in. Because I know for me, I mean, that's number one. I think once I can get to that point, then I'm okay moving past it. But just allowing myself to have the time to sit and do these things is usually the hardest part.
And there's lots of different ways of grounding. So I teach primarily energetic grounding, where we send our energy down through our energy centers and align all of that and get it to
Mhm.
really go down into the center of Earth as far as we can go. And then allow the energy of the Earth to come back up in her own time rather than just being like, okay, I'm there and bringing it all back up on your own. Of really slowing it down, sensing the energy as it's coming up, knowing it's there, feeling it in all the different body parts, relaxing all those body parts, allowing it to come in. So when I teach grounding, it can really be an hour to learn how to ground properly in the beginning because it is so hard for us to really take that time. But there's also physical grounding that you can do too. So you can take your feet and just rock back and forth on your heels and your on your toes as you're sitting there. You can do kind of like squats down and take your hands and move them down and ground your energy down intentionally that way. It's whatever works for you, of that everyone's energy works a little bit differently. There's not one way to do anything. And by allowing ourselves to go, okay, if this isn't working for me today, that's okay. Maybe I could try something else. And allowing that opportunity to be there is a really key part that I feel a lot of psychic skill teachers kind of overlook of this is the way to do it. You have to do it this way. Otherwise it doesn't work. If you go to enough psychic skill teachers out there, it's all going to be different. Everybody has different methods, different techniques, depending on who they learned from. So it's also about recognizing within yourself, what is my energy want? So one person that's in our membership that we have guided channeled meditations every month that Monty and I make together. She has a really hard time sitting and being able to focus on the meditation. And it's because she suffers from ADHD. Her body needs movement. So what Monty has advised is, hey, sitting doing nothing is not right for you. Why don't you go for a run instead? Your body needs that consistent movement to lull yourself into that sense of groundedness. And that's perfectly fine too. There's lots of different ways to do this. It's about working with your body, your energetic system, rather than having to force it into another box, because that's what we're trying to get away from when we really get into psychic skills. In the beginning of many of our motivations is, I've been in a box. I don't want to be in that box anymore. And a lot of times we just find a new box to put ourselves in when we end up
Correct.
going down those roads.
And do you feel that with practice and time, most people have the ability to tap into channeling?
Yes. I think anyone can do it, but not everybody should. And this is the key. So, for people that have any psychiatric disorder that causes disassociation, it's not a good thing for them to learn how to channel. If you have a hard time telling what is real and what isn't, extending that beyond your normal daily basis is probably not a good idea in this lifetime. And that's okay. There's plenty of other ways for you to get guidance and get the things that you need. It's probably not ideal. If you also have a very open energy and have difficulty regulating your own energy, you have to take care of that first before you start channeling. It is rare. I don't see it very often, but every once in a while, there will be someone that comes to me with an entity attachment. Now, some
Mm.
people believe in them, some people don't. That's
Mhm.
really up to you, personal opinions. I have had personal experience with entity attachments, both in people that I've known or in clients. So I do say, yeah, it's definitely a thing. Usually, when entity attachments occur, is because there's been some sort of trauma in someone's life. In most instances, it could be trauma with a big T, it could be trauma with a little t. It could also be caused by alcohol or drug dependence. So, those sorts of things can open up our energy in a way that then we can't control it. So, it's more of saying, I am someone who dealt with these things, and I'm learning how to maintain my energetic boundaries and take care of my energy of what's inside and not internalize what is not mine. And it can be something that happened to us that we have to deal with the fallout left over from. And it's not our fault why that happened, but it means that
Mhm.
we have to take responsibility for the interior energy before then we start interacting with exterior energies that aren't ours. So those are the two instances where I say, it
Okay.
may be not okay for you to do channeling, and to just be aware of that more so than saying, yes, everyone can do this. It is something that is entered into knowingly and with a lot of discipline.
And when you're working with channeling, when you're working with spirit guides and channeling, are you working with them to try to get answers to questions that you might have? Are you working with them to try to get guidance on your life and where you're going and what you're doing?
You can use their guidance for anything. Most people want to know practical everyday answers. So spirit guides are
Mhm.
really good for that because they're with us all the time and they see the different bits and pieces of our lives. But it can be that maybe you have some larger spiritual questions that you want to ask of, why do we reincarnate? What is the deal with that? Maybe you want to find out
Mhm.
more about that. There could be someone on your spirit team that knows that very well, or it could be a different being. It could be that you want to explore some different aspects of spirituality or different aspects of energy, or you want to really accomplish certain things in your life. There is some non physical being out there that wants to probably help you with that. Because the thing that we don't often recognize is that physical creation is a really, really, really small part of the universe. There's probably
Mhm.
a lot more non physical energies than there are physical energies. And we feel like we're alone a lot of the time because we don't recognize that.
Mhm.
But when we begin to open up and begin to ask for help, help usually shows up. I've never had it not show up, to be honest. For me, any of my clients, any of my students, every single time we've said, okay, we're going to start channeling, there's always something there. Sometimes there's even more than one thing there. And we have to be like, no, 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 only one at a time, guys. We have to do one at a time because they're very excited to be able to
Mhm.
finally get to talk to us. And when I first started channeling for other people, I started doing spirit guide channeling where I would bring their guide in and allow their guide to speak to them. And every single time the guide was like, I am so excited. Oh my gosh, I finally get to talk to them. This is amazing. I'm just like,
Mhm.
I'm so ready. I'm so jazzed. And they would be just
Mhm.
elated to begin that relationship. So I think that's part of it is just recognizing we're not alone. There's a lot of different resources and help out for us out there, but we have to ask. We have to be
Mhm.
open to it.
I've worked with a woman that does channeling in the past year, and what I found really interesting is that she was able to look back into past lives of mine, and it felt so weird having the conversation because there are things that I've always really known inside myself, but I always was like, "Well, if I ever say anything to anyone about this, they're gonna think I'm cuckoo." And then
Mhm.
she said these things to me, and she would have no idea about any of that stuff for
Has
me.
had no context. Yeah.
There would be no context. I mean, there would be no way really she could have spent the time to research all of this stuff to know about me. There would have been no time or even resource for that. And it was really affirming. And I felt like, wow, this really makes me know that all these things in my whole life that I have been feeling are real and they're not just fictional things that have been floating around in my head.
Yeah, for many of us, it is that validation of what we
Mhm.
already know. Most of the time when I do channeling sessions with clients and they bring questions for Monty, that Monty is a kind of higher being. I say he, it's really a they. It's an
Mhm.
adjustment that I'm getting used to. That
Mhm.
they've been on my spirit team, but they're also something larger than that their energy is much bigger than that. And they coordinate with other people that come to us for channeling session, their spirit teams, any of their ancestors that are there, any other beings that are hanging out. They kind of get all the information and compile it together, but then also give their own guidance. And a lot of the time, the questions that are asked, and Monty is really gentle, very grounded, very practical in their answers. And it can be very energy focused of saying, hey, this is an energy routine you need to do or something like that. But they're very practical answers. A lot of the time, the person already knows the answers. They
Mhm.
already can feel this within themselves. And it's really getting that validation or that confirmation
Mhm.
that they need. And then saying, okay, now that you know that this is true, what would you pick? What would you choose? The best guidance that we get is actually empowering us to make our own decisions. It's not
Mhm.
telling us this is what you should do. And that's, I think, one of the misunderstandings about channeling most of the time. Bad channeling tells you what to do, how to do it, why you like what negative consequences will happen if you don't to kind of scare you into
Mhm.
doing it. It
Mhm.
uses a lot of shoulds, a lot of force, and says, I'm the only one that has these answers. You have to
Mhm.
come to me. It's just replicating what we know as cults, right? In the non-physical.
Mhm.
That's not a good source
Mhm.
of guidance. And that
Right.
could be because of the source of guidance. It could be because of the channel. That happens. So for us, when we're looking for someone, it needs to kind of meet some certain criteria of if we're looking for someone to channel for us for any purpose, whether it's past life regression, if it's getting information from spirit beings, if it's mediumship, which is the act more of tuning into recently deceased people. If we're going down that road, we want to make sure, number one, we feel that the person who is doing the reading of whatever kind it is has done work. They do the work on themselves because if their filter's
Mhm.
messed up, that's going to come straight through.
Mhm.
The second thing is when the guidance starts to come in, it resonates with us in some way, even if it makes us recognize the difficult things that we don't want to admit to ourselves. It's still there that we kind of like, no, yeah, that's true. Even though I don't want to hear it, I know
Mhm.
that. I know that's true. It also
Mhm.
doesn't go against the tenets of major religions. We have a tendency to say, okay, we need to discard all religions, they're bad.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's true at all
Sure.
because they've been used and abused, certainly, but there are certain
Of course.
things to them that are true across religions. So we want to make sure that the guidance that we're getting is compliant with that. And it's also empowering us and giving us the option moving forward of saying, okay, now that you have this information, it's up to you to decide. It's up to you to figure this out. It's up to you to fail. That's part of the experience, is failing too. We learn a lot through failure. So
Of
that's
course.
the expectation of when we're looking for a channeler or someone to learn from. That's what we want to look for in channeling.
So when you work with your clients, so tell me about what you do exactly, because you have many things it seems that you're doing at this point. I mean, you have your podcast, you
Yes.
have clients, and then you also are teaching.
Yeah, so it kind of breaks into two groups that I teach channeling, and that's monitored and mentored by Monty. That Monty is kind of my go-to for a lot of my work. And we coordinate together and teach channeling, that we have a course that's self-guided. We also have a one-on-one for people who really want to begin to voice channel, as well as we have group teachings and group classes that we do 3 times a year and teach the basics and also advanced channeling techniques. And on that side is really, you want to learn how to do channeling on your own. You want to get guidance. You want to have that sort of relationship. On the other side of what we do, we have where we're providing channeling. So we have the podcast, which is every week, which we love doing, except for this last week, we missed one, which was very unfortunate. But we're at just around like getting close to like 50 episodes, which I'm very proud of.
Amazing. Very amazing.
And
Yes.
yeah, it has been transformative for me as well. We also have a membership that we do weekly guidance every week on different themes. So Monty will pick a theme of every month that we're working on, and then we'll have a guided meditation that's channeled, and then some live channeling that pairs with it to answer questions about, okay, so now we're working on this particular thing. How can we implement that? And then I also do with Monty one-on-one sessions where someone comes with 8 to 10 questions, and we go through the process of answering those. So if it's okay, I'll walk through the process of what channeling actually looks like now that I do, to explain that
Yes.
of that the process. So in terms of crystals that I use, since I know we're talking about crystals,
Yeah.
I have this giant, for those who are watching, this
Oh my
absolute
gosh.
ginormous quartz crystal that I keep
Oh my
that helps
gosh. It's
to,
gorgeous.
it's huge and I love it. And helps to like set the energy. So that way I know I'm in a really good place. I then will prepare before I do a channeling session with somebody, that I get my energy. I clear it out every day, every morning. I have a lot of energetic hygiene practices that I do on a consistent basis. But right before a channeling session, I'll prepare my energy by grounding down fully and really expanding out and inviting in Monty, getting them there that they're ready. And then when it gets into the channeling session, we start off by everybody, non-physical or physical, we're all centering in our energy. So you take 3 deep breaths, let everything go, and then I do an invocation. I always start channeling with an invocation to really set that energetic tone, to get everybody kind of acclimated, for us to all have an intent and purpose for why we're there, and to open up our energy. Because even the person who's receiving channeling, their
Mhm.
energy needs to be open enough to receive what's coming through. If they're in a
Mhm.
bad mood and or they're occupied with something else and they're not paying attention, a lot of channeling is receiving energy. It's not
Mhm.
just knowledge. Then we go through the process of, I get silent and invite Monty in. So what I do at that point is I set aside my thinking mind so it's out of the way, take all the energy in, on, and around my head, put it into a ball, set it to the side. I open up my energy centers more time, ground down, make sure all of that's ready. I prepare my vessel. And we channel really through our hearts in particular. So I really open up that space. And then Monty comes in from always from my front left. That's the direction they come from. And no matter what, I always verify who it is, because every once in a while somebody else will show up and I have to
Mhm.
be like, no, no, this is session is not for you. You need to tell who you're trying to talk to, that they need to go see somebody else. Of like, occasionally I'll have like a pass on loved one. I'm like, no, 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 this is not mediumship. Okay. I can't do that. We're not here for that yet. So I'm just tuned into Monty. I recognize their energy as they come to me as this bright light that's coming through waves of that. I can see that in my visualization. I get the sensation of having fins on my body because they have a very
Wow.
fishy energy. And I know that that's them. And then as they are coming towards me from the front left, my energy and my consciousness is going backwards. So I relax my body and allow my consciousness to drift away. And my energy is still within my overall energetic envelope. It's still contained within my energy. So I'm not astrally projecting, but
Mm-hmm.
my energy is back behind. It's no longer in my physical body. I am semi-conscious, so I don't go into a full trance state. I am still consciously aware. I do that so that way, if the channeling session, like there's an interruption, the internet goes out, I'm still there. I can resolve it. Or if it's too difficult for the person who is the sitter, that we can adjust. The human can come back in. We can do some human tending before we continue the channeling session. But my energy's back here. Monty's then in my body. And then Monty announces and says, "This is Monty." So that way the person knows that it's them. The beginning of every channeling session starts that way. Then they give an opening kind of statement. And usually the person's prepared 8 to 10 questions. Usually the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 or 3 questions get answered in that opening statement very often. And these are people, for like context, I've never met them before. I don't know anything about
Mm-hmm.
them. And Monty usually nails it straight away. And it's like, this is exactly the root of the issue that we're going to get to today. And then
Oh.
he invites them to ask their questions. And then they go through them and Monty guides them through. And it's really a conversation. It's not a channeling style where it's, I'm just delivering this and you absorb it and you're sitting here and
Mhm.
listening like a lecture. It is a conversation, two-way street. Monty will be like, is this clear? Do you need more clarification? What other questions do you have on this? That sort of like sitting down and having coffee with a friend sort of deal. Monty is very gentle, very understanding, very calm, but also has this like accountability aspect to them. And then at the end of the session, once we've answered all those questions, then Monty gives a conclusion of, this is the big things you need to take away from this session. This is what you need to know. These are your action steps to think about. And then Monty leaves and I come back in. And then we do any human support at that point of discussing what was talked about. Or sometimes Monty will give us energy exercises to do afterwards. And so we do those energetic exercises together and make sure that the person understands them so that way they can implement them later. And most people find that they need to listen to the recording a couple times to really get it all, of like it evolves over time. And that's a lot of feedback that we've had on the podcast too, is people will listen to episodes 2 or 3 times. And every time they
Mhm.
listen to it, they'll understand something else, understand something else. The reason why that is that channeling, when it's vocalized with Monty, and this is the case I found with other energy beings as well, we're in the state where when we're receiving, we're in our logical mind, we're putting the pieces together, we're understanding it, we're processing it. And it is opening up kind of this energetic field that we have around ourselves, that things that are illogical cannot come through. If we have a worldview that's a specific way and it butts up against the logic energy that we have that surrounds us, we're like, can't compute, you're not allowed in here. When we engage in the vocal channeling, our logic is like, okay, I get this. This is cool. We're getting this. And that allows the energy of the channeling to come through. So people also have what we call an oracular experience. When they come in, they learn things, they understand things, they're given tools, they make decisions, they move forward. But the bit that really impacts the most when we do channeling is the energetic shift that they get. It's very similar to energy healing in some way. Their energy changes, and who
Mhm.
they were in the beginning when they came into channeling and who they are when they're leaving channeling are not identical. There is
Mhm.
that oracular, unexplainable experience in the middle that you're never really able to articulate to someone of, this is what happened. Like, this is what they said, but I changed in that conversation and I don't know how. That's what we call an oracular experience. And oracular experiences can be really different things. It doesn't have to be
Mhm.
just a channeling session. It could be that you're out of the grocery store, you've been wondering about something, and somebody says something as they're walking by, and that was the thing you needed to hear. And that happens. And there's
Mhm.
a long tradition, especially in ancient Greece, of that was a form of channeling, of going out into the public marketplace and listening to hear from messages spoken by other people. And those sorts of oracular experiences are part of our daily lives, whether you're in a channeling session or not.
That's true. That's so true. Now, after you complete a channeling session, what does that feel like for you? Is that something where, I mean, because I could imagine for me, that would feel probably that's a lot of energy. So do you feel tired? Do you feel uplifted? Do you feel drained? Like, what does that feel like in your body?
I immediately, when I come back into my body, I feel kind of like spacey woozy. And that's usually because I need to ground down my energy. So I actually use a crystal to help with that. That I use this one that's called Impactite.
Oh,
It
yes.
is the bits of the earth after a really big asteroid, it's from, I believe, Norway, came and hit the earth. This is the earth that got like smushed and piled up. So it's not a tektite in that it's not of earth. It is just an earth bound one, but it's really, really heavy, has like super grounding energy. I used to use palm root, which is also a really good grounding stone, because if we think about it, it's fossilized palm root that then is down into the earth with the intention of going down, soaking up all the nutrients and everything in the earth. So I found both of those have been very helpful. That kind of helps me get more into my body. After we channel, we always want to ground down and make sure we center in really well. For me, I feel uplifted after I channel. I often feel a little bit buzzy, a little bit excited, a little bit like, wow, look at all this stuff that we learned. This is amazing.
Mhm.
And then over time, my energy starts to come back down. And it's also very normal, especially for people who are channeling for the first time. When we do blended channeling, internal channeling, where the being is coming into our bodies and then they leave, we can even feel a certain sense of depression almost, like little d,
Mhm.
not big D clinical depression, but we feel like, oh, I'm not as big and as bold and as
Mhm.
exciting and as amazing because we're sensing somebody else's energy in our body. So we can have that kind of like almost like sadness when we first start
Mhm.
to channel in the beginning. And over time, the more that we channel, the more that our energy acclimates to being more expanded all the time, the more energy that we have a capacity for, the higher vibrational energies that we have a capacity for. Our bodies have to adjust to that over time. It's not like, you could straight out the gate for most people channel a really, really high vibrational being straight out without having done extensive energy work. It could actually make you pretty ill unless,
Mm.
of course, you've done it in past lifetimes. That happens. I've had students that's their story. But for most people, they feel that kind of like, oh, my energy is just not as expanded anymore. It feels kind of sad. So for me, I felt like that in the very beginning of like, this is exciting. I'm excited I am doing this channeling, but also feeling like, oh, I feel a little bit more embodied. And I don't really like that.
Mhm.
So you also have to learn that like being embodied is a good thing. There's
Mhm.
good parts to being human, being in our physical creation, and that channeling is not an escape. It is a tool, but it's not meant to replace our experience.
How many in a day for you, how many channeling sessions would you do?
I try to keep it to 2 to 3 a day, depending on, like, how many if it's a client session, if it's a group session, if we're recording a podcast. I also have my own personal practice that I channel every day, and I try to make sure that I'm not doing it too much, but I've also built up a lot of stamina, and I also have a regular day job, so I also have to accommodate that. Other professional channels will channel 6, 7 times a day, no problem.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is something that you came into later in life. I mean, so I imagine your life before this probably looked very different.
Very, very different. I was not a woo-woo person whatsoever.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
years and years ago. So I own a digital marketing agency that specializes in Google Ads and SEO is what my day
Oh,
job is.
okay.
And we did SEO for a website that was like a directory for healers. And that was the first time I'd really even heard, like I'd kind of like heard murmurings of past life regression because I was into yoga as like a
Mhm.
teenager. Turns out I'm hypermobile. So I was like doing the things my body needed to stretch out and things like that. But as a late 20-year-old, I guess, was about how old I was when I was doing this website. It was like Akashic Records. What a
Mhm.
joke. I was
You're like,
like,
"What is this? This is
what is this?
crazy."
How do you even say the word Reiki? Like, is it Reiki? Like, how do you
Reiki.
say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what it was. And I was like, well, if people want to spend money on this, that's fine. I'll help them do their SEO. That's their choice, and thought it was the silliest stuff in the world of like the just thinking it was bizarre. And I did grow up religious. I grew up in a Congregationalist church, which is a very, very lovey-dovey version of Christianity. We literally in our the like entryway of our church had rainbows painted on it, and the church
Oh,
is
wow.
very progressive. That
Mhm.
they supported suing the state of South Carolina to get equality in marriage for gay couples. So
Oh,
it's a very
wow.
different upbringing religiously than most people.
Mhm.
But just kind of went into the hustle lifestyle. And I started my business when I was in my very 20s because I couldn't find a job, and had started like moonlighting while I was working for a local government, and then ended up kind of stumbling my way into making a very successful marketing agency that I had 7 employees. We're doing, $1 million in revenue a year. It was very, very stressful. I was working like 80 to 90-hour weeks. I got
Mm.
completely, entirely burnt out. And
Mhm.
I tried doing regular therapy. The problem is I am extremely self-aware and
Mhm.
was already applying CBT to myself. It wasn't working. And the
Mhm.
therapist were like, "You should be a therapist. You'd be good at this." I'm like, "Okay, but it's not helping me right now. What do I do?"
Yeah.
Tried doing went down the hustle culture route at that point in time, was very into stoicism, decided, okay, if you can't go through the obstacle, go around the obstacle, go through
Mhm.
it, trying to figure out all that stuff. It's all very, very masculine.
Mhm.
And hustle culture is very masculine, especially at that
Mhm.
era. And at that point, was really like starting to have panic attacks going to work. That I'd be driving myself to work. I'd be gripping the steering wheel because this was right after the height of the pandemic. Things were going great in my business. It was growing, but people were crazy on the road. I was starting to have panic attacks. Things would go wrong at work of there would be some glitch in the system. We'd spend some client's budget for an entire month in 24 hours, and there would be
Mhm.
nothing that we could do to fix it. And it would just be, that's just the way it is. And I knew there had to be something more. And I started looking for something else to help me because I was like, this can't just be, you just have to cope all the time with these things. Like, this seems wrong. This doesn't seem right to me. And at that time was it was, like, very popular. This app called Clubhouse had started to
Oh,
be, like,
okay.
big in the marketing space, and almost nobody else out of marketing really used it that much. But a friend of mine in Australia that ended up becoming my energy healing later, that I worked with really, really closely, she also had worked in marketing. That's how we knew each other, that she was a copywriter. And she had also had the app, and I was up awake in the middle of the night because 'cause we'd gotten a puppy, and the puppy was not sleeping. I was super stressed out, and I was just on the app trying to see, like, "Okay, what is this thing all about?" And Clubhouse, you could have conversations with other people in real time. And she was having a conversation with somebody else at the time about how energy healing was something that she was exploring, and it was helping her solve all the same issues that I was going through. And as I was listening to her, I was like, "Okay, maybe this is the thing that I need to go do." So I did a session with her because she was deciding, do I want to be an energy healer or not? And it was so powerful and so transformative. I was like, I got to commit to this. And
Mhm.
in the interim of that, and this is a trigger warning for a difficult medical thing, medical trigger warning. I had an infection and got treated with an antibiotic called ciprofloxacin, and ended up having a severe adverse reaction to it. I lost the ability to walk. I lost about 20 pounds within 2 months. I had tendinopathy throughout my whole body, visual snow, neuropathy, had difficulty regulating my temperature, had brain fog, tinnitus, like the whole 9 yards, like everything that they say in the textbook of like, you shouldn't take this drug because these things could happen. It has a black box warning in the United States. It's banned in most other places. Please, listeners, never take it. Any of that class. And at that point, the medical community was like, we don't know how to fix it you. You'll just have to wait it out. And I was like, all right, well, I did this energy healing before. Nothing can help me. I now can't take hardly any drugs because it could trigger a relapse reaction. I'm going to invest in energy healing and do this and really commit to it. And that was really the transformation of really making that decision of, there is nothing else out there for me. Therapy's not working.
Mhm.
I can't take any medications. My body is completely wrecked by this medication. I don't know what else to do. And it was the day when I finally got out of bed for the first time after about a week and a half to finally go stand in the shower. And it was so ungodly painful. And I remember just taking the shower and being like, when I exit this shower, it's going to change. This is not my reality. And I'm going
Mhm.
to commit to doing energy healing. And that was when I really like made that determination that that was what I was going to do. Did I know I would be a voice channeler later? Absolutely not.
It's so interesting, and I thank you for sharing that story because I think a lot of people sometimes think like you always have these abilities, or maybe you do but you don't recognize them. And I just like to share with people that, if you are interested in these things, there's not a time limit on it. You can
No.
you can tap into
Yeah.
these things at any point. You can start doing energy healing if regular therapy hasn't worked for you, or as an adjunct to that or
Mhm.
whatnot. I mean, we put a cap on our lives that, like, your however many years old you are now, your time is up and you can't learn all these new things and you can't try all these different things, which is ridiculous.
Oh, it is, especially since what most people don't know is I am an extremely young channeler. It is rare to channel
Mhm.
this young. Most channelers are over the age of 65 and they're women.
Interesting. Oh,
And like
wow, I didn't know that.
statistically speaking, channelers are older. All of the people that I've learned channeling from are at the end of their lives.
Mm,
And that like the people that I learned from in books, like I would find a book and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to learn channeling from this person. And then they would have passed away. Like
ugh,
one guy had passed away literally 3 weeks before I contacted
oh
him.
my gosh.
So, so there's definitely like an understanding that even if you're someone who is, you feel like you're very late in the game, it doesn't matter. You're still there. You're still in it.
Mhm,
And you can learn to access those psychic skills. Cause I did not, when I was younger, absolutely not, had no frame of reference for anything of any sort of idea of psychic senses. It wasn't like I shut it down as a little kid. I didn't have any of that whatsoever for
mhm,
me. And it was just the evolution that I went through of having some really traumatizing things that happened that made me say, okay, I have to change my perspective on the world. This is no longer working for me. And it wasn't that I had been given this by somebody else and said, we're a psychic family. This is the way it works.
mhm,
And in fact, my parents are very like, okay, honey, sweetie, if you like it, okay, great. And like I love them dearly. I don't know how much they support my work because we don't talk about it, and that's okay. They don't need to.
mhm,
It's something that I enjoy. I enjoy doing. And I found as well, to my surprise, that most of my friends and people that I'm around most of my day totally into it. Think it's great. Think the work that I'm doing is amazing, really support it. Have had people come out of the woodwork to do things for our work to really extend it out into the world without me even asking. Whereas
mhm,
before with the marketing agency, it was not that way. It was
mhm.
hustle, strive, push every second of every day. And it's not like there weren't serendipitous things that happened, but it's a very, very different experience for me now of there is no doubt in my mind that channeling is what I'm meant to be doing at this point in my life, but that I had to do all that stuff before to be able to do that now. If I had come straight out the gate doing it, I don't think I would have kept doing it. I think I would have said, no, I don't think I would have had the confidence in myself and my own self worth to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do something everyone thinks that I have quite literally lost my mind.
I feel like that's what everybody's saying about me behind closed doors right now, but that's fine. It's my journey, not theirs. So,
Well, and you never know what's going to happen to them. Of they could have something that changes their life and then they find their way to it and they have completely forgotten that you were the person that they saw doing it first. You never know. And I think that's important for us to really recognize is that we don't know the effect that we have on other people.
very true. Very true. I mean, I think a lot of times people often are watching what we're doing, but they're sitting back silently. They're taking it in and they're absorbing the information, but they're maybe too scared to reach out, or they're afraid of judgment on themselves for even saying something. And there can be many different reasons why. And, I've had, and I'm sure you have, like you said, like people have reached out to you and said things to you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you remembered me from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Yeah, I really appreciate your story and I really appreciate you sharing that because I think that's something that I really love to drive home in this podcast, especially. Like, if you feel called to something, if you have something that's inside of you, you should feel like you can go for it. We as a society are told that we have to have, I work in the medical field. We're supposed to be doctors, marketers, business people. We're supposed to have these jobs that, everybody
Logic
has,
everything. Yeah.
logical jobs, but sometimes we're called to something else. And that doesn't mean you can't be successful at something else.
I think it's that very often as a society, we have prioritized logic above all other forms of knowing. But
Mhm.
the truth is, even in the medical community, things happen and we can't explain them.
All the
We
time.
don't know why the body works the way that it does most of the time. And you could say, well, science isn't there yet, but then there's just things that we know the science about and it goes a completely different way than it's supposed to. And I think
Totally.
it's, the spooky science stuff that we don't yet know about quantum reality, of two different states existing at the same time. Of it started as like Schrodinger's cat started as a logic experiment of like, could you have a cat that's both dead and alive at the same time? Could both those states exist? And then science proves, hey, actually, that's true. It's
Mhm,
not just an experiment of thought anymore. We
mhm.
actually know that multiple states of matter can exist at the same moment. And the more that I think science catches up, the more that it's going to understand that there are non-physical energies and things like that that we can't yet explain, that maybe we will be able one day to explain, but there's always going to be a certain amount of unknowable mystery because to me, the source, the everything, the all that is, the God, the Godhead, whatever you want to call it, we can never fathom and understand it completely because it would be to contain a multitude of everything. And we can't, as humans, hold that energy. So there will always be some sort of mystery to understanding everything. And I think that the part of it that we can apply in a practical sense to our lives is feel less shame about your preferences and who you are and what you feel on the inside, because while you can't explain it and while the rest of the world can't explain it either, doesn't mean it's anything for you to fear, be afraid of, or see as something negative, because it's really just a matter of preference.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. And I think I will end on that note. I would love for you to share with my guests everywhere they can find you, your podcast, give us all the details.
You can find me on most social media platforms at Kim Charlson. And then you can listen to our podcast, Vessel and Voice, and that's available pretty much everywhere. We also have it as a video on YouTube as well. And then you can sign up on our website for the free Meet Your Spirit Guides meditation, as well as a mini channeled course on how you can step further into your bravery if you're wanting to keep going down that path of exploring the uniqueness of yourself and really showing up as you. That Monty has a channeled guidance on that. That's a little mini course to guide you through. So all of that's available at kimcharlson.com. And I hope to hear from the listeners. Let us know how you like this episode as well.
Oh my gosh. This is going to be This episode will be coming out in my upcoming season, and it's gonna fit in line with just the whole vibe of the season 3, so it's gonna be so perfect.
Amazing.
I know everybody's gonna love it. I'll have all of Kim's details in the show notes, and I hope my listeners reach out to you. It would just thank you so much for coming on. This was so fun to chat with you. I feel like we could talk forever now that we're going down all these other rabbit holes. I'm like, "Oh, I love talking about all this stuff. It's so fun."
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight. And yes, that's the benefit of having two podcasters is we could talk forever.
Yeah, we're just chatty. We just love to be chatty, and we love to talk about fun things, and it's just, this whole, like, spiritual realm is just so vast, and you just never know where you're gonna end, and it's
Oh
just been
goodness, no.
so fun. It's just so
Yeah,
fun.
it's
I love
just
it.
to surrender, allow, do it to the point that you're comfortable and it'll unfold in its own way. And I think that's the best part of the adventure, although sometimes frustrating.
Oh, absolutely. Alright, Kim, well, you have a beautiful day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending this time at the threshold with me. If you want to go deeper, follow me on Instagram at mystical.mama.ash, where I share daily crystal magic and behind the scenes of this liminal life. You can also find resources, previous episodes, and ways to work with me at bigcrystalenergy.com. We're also on YouTube at Big Crystal Energy Podcast. And if this episode resonated with you, please rate it and review it and share it with a friend that you think would connect with it. It would mean so much to me and helping build this beautiful community of other magical friends and crystal workers. Thank you so much. Until next time, bye.